Gamers.
They say all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. But there are a lucky few who get to play at work and make it pay. In fact, Apple Computer was put on the map by a couple of young men employing just such a strategy. Now a similar story may be unfolding near Dallas. Byron Harris reports.
Widely considered the grandfather of first-person shooters, Wolfenstein and its lengthy history know both the thrill of victory and the agony of failure. The franchise's 2009 entry, the Raven Software-developed Wolfenstein, marked a particularly low point for the series, leaving many to ponder whether protagonist Blazkowicz's Nazi-killing days had finally come to an end. MachineGames, however, a Swedish studio founded by former Starbreeze developers, proved approximately 5 years later that BJ still had plenty of fight left in him. The team successfully pitched a new direction for the IP to series creator id Software and publisher Bethesda Softworks, proposing an alternate history post-World War II narrative wherein the Nazis claimed victory. MachineGames' ensuing partnership with the companies culminated in 2014's Wolfenstein: The New Order, 2017's Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, and the Old Blood expansion in between. These adventures cast a darker, more serious tone over the franchise that ultimately led to BJ's transition into a family man. And killing Nazis inherently became integral to the proverbial family business. Thus, Wolfenstein: Youngblood dropped players into the roles of Jess and Soph, BJ's twin daughters who, by the 1980s, had grown old enough to infiltrate Nazi-controlled Paris, but remained young enough to embark on a relatively lighthearted coming-of-age journey. On paper, the premise worked flawlessly. In practice, Youngblood crumbled under the pressure of cooperative gameplay, light RPG elements, and an open-ended structure, all qualities that went unexplored in MachineGames' previous projects. Consequently, the final product came across as a hollow shell of the Wolfenstein experience that millions grew to associate with the brand. This is the tragedy of Wolfenstein: Youngblood. As far back as the start of Wolfenstein: The New Order's development, MachineGames knew how it wanted BJ Blazkowicz's character's arc to play out. The creative lead specifically had a trilogy in mind, though the Old Blood and Youngblood side projects didn't appear as pit stops on the roadmap early on. Wolfenstein's Old Blood expansion worked out well as an interstitial release between the first two titles, however, prompting MachineGames to pursue a similar endeavor post-Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Senior game designer Andreas Oyafors told Game Central the crew began brainstorming next steps near the end of the sequel's production, which resulted in one group splitting off to focus on R&D for a third mainline installment, while another produced a smaller game based on the systems in Wolfenstein 2. Oyafors admitted the decision to create Youngblood probably took shape way too late. Bethesda accepted the pitch nonetheless, intrigued by the idea of a story centered around the twins that BJ's pregnant love interest, Anya, carried throughout The New Colossus. As such, co-op felt like a natural fit once the Blazkowicz twins joined the fray. And according to Oyafors and executive producer Jet Gustafsson, cooperative play allowed MachineGames to explore fun, fresh challenges by providing a Wolfenstein experience that fans could enjoy with a friend. Such a bold choice forced the developers to revise their approach to storytelling, gameplay, and level design. In addition, multiplayer constituted a path MachineGames wasn't yet equipped to tackle on its own. Fellow Bethesda-owned studio Arcane Leon thus seemed the perfect partner for expanding upon the Wolfenstein universe with a co-op adventure. Speaking with Gama Sutra, Erik Gustafsson divulged that discussions about collaborating with Arcane Leon emerged in the back half of 2017, during the release period for Dishonored 2's standalone expansion, Death of the Outsider. Arcane not only added extra personnel to the ambitious endeavor, but its prowess with open-ended design also gave MachineGames license to wade into the domain of non-linearity. The Swedish studio further prepared itself for the engineering challenges associated with multiplayer games by sending Oyaforce and several engineers to visit other Bethesda teams, such as Elder Scrolls Online developer ZeniMax Online. Interestingly, Youngblood's Dishonored-inspired nonlinear structure stemmed from the difficulty of trying to build a co-op title in the same vein as Wolfenstein's typical single-player outings. The design philosophy that MachineGames usually employed could not support two players roaming the map independently of one another, for example. As a result, Arcane's expertise in open-ended level design informed the multiple entries and pathways that snake throughout each mission in Youngblood. This decision most notably enhanced co-op, allowing players to divide and conquer by approaching enemy encounters more tactically. Non-linear levels were also a product of the limitations that beset Youngblood's predecessors. Gustafsson explained that the Wolfenstein 2 team emphasized the player's ability to complete the game within the game, meaning all collectibles were obtainable without restarting the story campaign. In pursuit of such convenience, MachineGames devised a system whereby players revisited previously completed maps. Said system bore flaws of its own, though, as some fans believed replaying missions for the triviality of collectibles diminished each area's otherwise impactful hold on the overarching narrative. Gustafsson admitted that complete the game within the game, as a guiding design principle, took a back seat in favor of MachineGames' story-focused priorities in the sequel. The open-ended quality of Youngblood essentially solved this particular problem, yet other aspects of co-op demanded quite a bit of fine-tuning. In a pre-launch interview with Swiss publication Games.ch, Andreas Oyaforce spoke of how Youngblood's earlier builds almost felt as if two single-player users just happened to land on the same map. The ensuing goal, consequently, pivoted to revolve around balancing a fulfilling cooperative experience. Turning enemy soldiers into the focal point during hostile encounters served as one solution. For instance, successfully dispatching the heavily armored Super Soldaten troops required sisters Jess and Soph to work in tandem. Since the sisterly bond represented a non-negotiable part of MachineGames' vision, the AI-controlled companion needed to appear just as adept in combat as a human-controlled character if solo play was to prove a viable option. Gustafsson described developing the AI as an arduous balancing act, especially given the high-octane combat featured in Wolfenstein games. The key rested in ensuring the AI character could mirror the actions of the lone player. In turn, the user's skill determined the success of the AI-controlled sister. When the player performed well, their CPU counterpart similarly held its own. Meanwhile, user-induced mistakes culminated in their AI partner succumbing to enemy fire. Youngblood's PEP signals further enhanced the gameplay in this respect, regardless of the preference for cooperative or solo play. PEP signals started as standard emotes before Gustafsson proposed the idea of adding gameplay functionality to the feature. When one sister activated a PEP signal mid-fight, the bot character included, they or their companion gained health or armor boosts that, if used strategically, could turn the tide of battle. The developers also added rather rudimentary RPG elements and customization options, hoping to encourage user choice in terms of playstyles. Oyaforce noted as much in a QuakeCon 2019 interview with Game Mania. Gustafsson provided extra insight while speaking with US Gamer, revealing that character and weapon customization evolved so co-op partners could complement each other in combat. All in all, these additions to the rebooted Wolfenstein franchise held plenty of promise from the outset. But new styles of play meant only so much to a brand that regained prominence on the market, thanks in large part to its developers' storytelling chops. While nonlinear design, dual protagonist, and customization strengthened the core pillars of MachineGames' tried-and-true Wolfenstein formula, the storytelling, in many respects, played second fiddle. Even as the studio's biggest project at the time, Youngblood featured less story content than The New Order and The New Colossus, which explained the lengthy cutscenes in the spin-off's opening sections. The developers had plenty of exposition to convey, too, considering the narrative setting several years after the conclusion of Wolfenstein's incomplete trilogy. As fans later discovered, much of the exposition in Youngblood was front-loaded into the first act, a far cry from the thoughtful manner in which Wolfenstein 2 drip-fed BJ's backstory. Writers also felt the need to reevaluate the franchise's approach to character and tone. Erik Gustafsson specifically acknowledged the difficult task that writers grappled with while attempting to infuse levity into a tale rife with serious themes. Wolfenstein 2, despite its darker tone, succeeded on this front. However, MachineGames and Arcane approached the story of Youngblood with a far more lighthearted slant from the outset. Their infamous father harbored brooding qualities, sure, but Jess and Soph were teenage girls who viewed the world through a different lens. This naturally informed each sister's lively personality, something players may have found jarring given the restraint MachineGames previously showed by ensuring BJ's perceived action hero persona never undermined the grave state of the world around him. On top of the tonal shift, Wolfenstein's specially crafted events failed to make the cut. Gameplay director Frederick Youngdahl clarified in a Bethesda.net blog post that such gameplay instances generally hinged on known constants like player location and progression. Ultimately, this design framework didn't translate well to the cooperative, open-ended nature of Youngblood. Many of the newer ingredients came at a cost, compromising what made MachineGames' revival of the once-abandoned shooter series so special. That Youngblood's scope significantly expanded during production only exacerbated the growing pains, especially for a team that, according to production director John Jennings, had to manage technical learning while simultaneously juggling gameplay learning in unfamiliar territory. Worse still, the developers only had so much time to overcome these obstacles due to a shorter than usual production window that lasted less than 2 years. Time limitations, unsurprisingly, affected key facets of the creation process, namely level blocking and testing, because of how long it took to implement the second player in-game. Wolfenstein Youngblood's hardships didn't end with development woes either. From an optics standpoint, news about Wolfenstein Youngblood hit the world stage under less than ideal circumstances. Bethesda Softworks announced the co-op title during its E3 2018 press conference, the very same event that debuted details concerning the online-focused status of Bethesda Game Studios' Fallout 76. The public wasted no time contrasting these unpopular multiplayer reveals against the publisher's promise to save Player One at the 2017 Game Awards. Pete Hines, Senior Vice President of Global Marketing at Bethesda, later told VG247, the Save Player One ad campaign poked fun at fears that single-player games were dying. Hines said the company had no intention of leading fans to believe its studios would exclusively develop single-player titles, insisting internal aspirations included online and offline endeavors. But unfortunately, the first multiplayer outing by MachineGames failed to hit the mark, receiving divisive reviews and an equally mixed response from fans. On one hand, the action-packed romp further invigorated the brand. The moment-to-moment gameplay felt as refined as ever, and the Blazkowicz girls held their own, indicating that Wolfenstein could thrive without BJ at the helm. Not everyone felt that way, though. While the gunplay of Youngblood managed to capture Wolfenstein 2's celebrated controls and general feel, the 2017 sequel offered an experience above and beyond a stellar shooter. Its characters and narrative proved similarly captivating from start to finish, a tall order the spin-off couldn't fulfill. Proof of MachineGames' and Arcane's inexperience with multiplayer littered Youngblood's various shortcomings too. The absence of a pause function counted among the most notable criticisms leveled against the game. Even those who played offline were unable to pause until patch 1.0.4 went live nearly 1 month after the July 2019 launch. Youngblood's frustrating checkpoint system, which forced players to restart missions after losing a boss fight, constituted another major hiccup that went several weeks without a fix. The $30 price point and $40 deluxe edition, complete with a free buddy pass, softened the blow to a degree. In November, MachineGames sweetened the deal by deploying a free content update featuring new maps, abilities, skins, and endgame activities. The studio never confirmed as much, but the November content drop seemingly represented an attempt at the post-launch support Jörg Gustafsson previously teased as contingent upon the success of Youngblood. It stands to reason that the developer and publisher consider this level of ongoing support a fruitless endeavor. Though a consequence of circumstance, time constraints, and inexperience, the tragedy that is Wolfenstein Youngblood may not itself warrant the label of fruitless. MachineGames learned a great deal from the cooperative shooter, knowledge some developers have said could inform future adventures in the Wolfenstein universe. And despite the shortcomings of Youngblood, the brand may benefit from giving Jess and Soph another chance at leading the charge. Thank you for watching. We'd like to take this time to thank, by name, the generous patrons who have pledged to our Hall of Fame reward tier. Caleb Shishkevich, Fernando Lopez Ojeda, Maktoum Saeed Al Maktoum, Paul Cousineau, and those currently subscribed to our producer reward tier: Darirap Sigurdsson, EmuMovies.com, Lame Game Man, Milkshake, Schizo Lingvo. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our channel and backing us on Patreon.